We have a design, a labyrinth of cooling channels buried in Inconel. But before we commit a single gram of metal powder, we have to light the fire, virtually.
To get an idea of what our engine would look like, we used common methods from aerospace engineering and eventually reached the limits of these methods. Only simple geometries can be calculated analytically, and only simple processes, such as acceleration of the nozzle or propellant flow through the injector, can be described this way. However, when we may face a complex phenomena like combustion, fuel evaporation, turbulence, and nonlinear heat transfer, there is no exact solution.
To solve a complex problem, we must use the so-called functional decomposition method, in which the problem is split into simpler parts that can be solved individually. Then, by combining all these solutions, we can obtain a complete solution. This principle was used in the design of our engine.
In the old days, you build it, fired it, and if it's melted, you redesign it. That took years. With SARA V3, we simulate. We split our model into simple sections: the combustion chamber, the metallic body, and the cooling liquid. We construct mathematical links between them. To ensure consistency in our calculations, we use previous experimental results from SARA V1 and V2 engines.
But simulating a hybrid engine is harder than simulating a liquid one. The fuel is solid paraffin, and as it burns, it disappears. The geometry of the combustion chamber constantly changes. We had to use a dynamic mesh, a grid that stretches and deforms in real time to follow the regressing fuel surface.
The dynamic mesh is a powerful solution when working with fuel regression and erosion. However, it also has disadvantages. The simulation time decreases significantly, as the mesh and flow must adapt to the geometry in each simulation step. As a result, we are limited in where we can apply the dynamic mesh in order to meet the project timeline, while still accurately modeling the engine.
And even then, the simulation time would be enormous. Tens of millions of computational cells, multiplied by tens of thousands of iterations, would require months of simulations, which we did not have. The only option was to look for mathematical symmetry in our system. That is why our engine is divided into 60-degree sections, repeated around the circumference. We can solve only 1/6 of the geometry, and then replicate the solution across the other sections, obtaining the complete flow inside the engine. It is like using a mirror, but a special mathematical one.
It's not just about gas flow, it's also about chemistry. We used a non-premixed combustion model with probability density functions for faster flame simulation. This allows us to predict precisely when nitrous oxide meets the paraffin vapor and where combustion occurs. Among the many combustion models available today, we selected one that accurately simulates nitrous oxide decomposition and its reaction with hydrocarbon fuels, which are the products of our fuel grade decomposition.
Combustion is just one of the models used in the chamber flow simulation. To complete the system, we employed Reynolds average turbulence modeling, a built-in particle model, and a compressible flow model in the nozzle.
We had to use one of the most advanced and complex simulation models for this engine, because we were seeking the highest possible precision in our simulations. Since this work involves technological development, we maintain strong cooperation with our partner companies and international collaborators to obtain reliable simulation results.
The flow in the combustion chamber is extremely hot. But how can this heat be transferred to the material? And most importantly, how can we protect the material from melting? This is where the second stage of our simulation work takes place. It is the so-called conjugate heat transfer simulation, in which the material receives heat through the gas wall heat transfer mechanism and then transmits this heat into the cooling system.
A major problem at this stage was the increased complexity of the mathematical model, which cannot be solved automatically, even with modern software. We had to program this transfer function manually, creating a bridge between the gas and structural simulation. And this was probably the most difficult part of the entire simulation effort. At the end, this task was also completed successfully, and with some structural modifications, we became more confident that our engine would work. At least we hope so.
The simulation lives in a server. The engine must live in the real world. For that, we turn to our partners at Senai Joinville. This isn't a desktop printer, it's an industrial beamline.
When I first visited the Senai Institute of Innovation in Laser Processing in 2023, I was impressed by the qualification and dedication of their team, as well by the level of the equipment they already had at that time. At that moment, I realized that our idea of building a 3D printed engine was very feasible.
Laser powder bed fusion. A high-power laser draws the engine, layer by layer, tenths microns at a time, into a bed of Inconel 718 powder. It takes days, thousands of layers, and it happens in the argon-filled chamber.
As several months passed with meetings, rework, and adaptation of the engine model, we were finally able to proceed with the fabrication of the baseline engine. And if this succeeded, we could prove that the engine can be manufactured and assembled. Just that. No fire, no thrust for now.
The vertical orientation was critical. By printing the nozzle pointing down, our teardrop channels supported themselves. But gravity is still the enemy. The powder bed supports the weight, but the thermal stress fights the geometry.
The technological process for manufacturing and post-processing the engine is designed in such a way that thermal stress and deformations in the finished engine remain within acceptable limits. One important advantage of our design is the generative structure of the injection plate. The metal supports itself, and these supports are optimized to minimize flow losses in the injection chamber. The printing process starts from the substrate plate and proceeds layer by layer until the manufacturing is complete.
This was a critical moment. We printed thin cooling channels inside the wall. If the powder is fused inside and if we can't get it out, the engine is a paperweight. After all, that pile of dust, that was a sign of success.
This is the moment of truth. The metal powder flows out of the labyrinth of cooling channels. It was not easy to remove and inspect these tiny passages. The channels are clear. We can proceed with machining the engine.
When the laser melts the metal, it creates massive internal stresses. The printed part wants to warp. Before we even cut it off the build plate, the whole engine goes into a furnace for stress relief. It bakes at 980 degrees Celsius to relax the crystal structure. The printing process leaves a surface roughness of about 15 microns. This is fine for the outer skin, but impossible for sealing. We mount the engine on a 5-axis CNC to machine the interfaces. We face the flanges to a roughness of 0.8 microns and tap the sensor ports to standard 1/8 inch NPT. This hybrid manufacturing combines the geometric freedom of printing with the sealing reliability of machining.
Machining a 3D printed engine proved to be much more complex than we initially anticipated. We encountered significant challenges, particularly with machining the sensor ports, navigating difficult tool angles, and dealing with notorious toughness of Inconel. This phase required specialized tooling and highly specific machining strategies. We certainly had our share of setbacks along the way. However, working through these issues heavily expanded our capabilities. Today we are fully confident in our ability to post-process superalloys and bring this engine to life. These hard-learned lessons from this build are invaluable, guaranteeing that our future designs will be even more advanced and technologically refined.
After the machining, the engine passed the last thermal terratement to obtain the required mechanical properties and to serve its destiny: operate at extreme thermal and pressure loads.
It's heavier than the CAD model looks, but lighter than the battleship. You can feel the density of the Inconel. We printed it in 2 sections, the pre-chamber and the post-chamber, to allow us to inspect the internal geometry and place the injector's NPU charge.
Now, the test integration begins. We need to make a first ever test of this engine. It has to sustain the pressure with safety margins. The O-rings are seated. Every bolt that is tightened brings us closer to the test stand. There are no leakages detected. The digital twin said it would work. The printed twin is ready to prove it.
Integration test showed that the engine parts were perfectly compatible. The engine was appeared as one piece at the first time. It was fascinating.
The most critical interface is the main flange. We use high-temp O-rings. Because the flange is printed, we designed a specialized gland groove that supports the seal on the both sides from the cooling path. This prevents the O-ring from extruding, even when the chamber pressure hits 60 bar, and the vibration tries to shake the joint apart.
Actually, the first pressure-proof test took place at Senai. We had to be sure that the thin-walled chamber would withstand pressure of 45 bar, and more importantly, that the cooling channels would sustain at least 60 bar. We were very fortunate with this first prototype. That is the day we've been waiting for so long. And what about the test stand? Of course, we have to build it too.
The next episode will cover what is probably one of the most exciting parts of this project. You will see how the test bench is built and how the rocket engine is fired for the first time.